In my journey working for Windrose Rural Media Trust and the many stories that I've recorded on behalf of the Landscape Partnership, I came across Bridget Bowen. Now, Bridget has been involved in a few of the Landscape Partnership projects, and that's how I first met her. She's part of the Ridgeway Choir, South Dorset Ridgeway Choir. But in the course of interviewing Bridget, I also found out that she produced and published this book in 2015 about her village, Piddletrenthide. Now, I was fascinated as to why Bridget decided to take this adventure. I mean, publishing a book is not an easy thing to do. So I thought it would be really nice to actually find out the inspiration and why Bridget actually wanted to produce a book about her village. Now, Bridget moved to the village in 1986, and when she moved to her house, she was curious. She wanted to find out the history and heritage behind her house, you know, who lived there and things. It used to be a pub. So that's when she started kind of unlocking and kind of getting beneath the kind of surface of her own personal heritage and history of the place where she was living. And then it kind of spiraled and layers started to kind of develop. So really, Bridget, can I ask you the first question? How did it lead to the book in the end from 1986 when you first moved to the village?
Well, in 1986, I had spent the previous year, when I was living in Dorchester, researching the first community play with David Edgar, the writer. And that unlocks the door, as you say, to the record office and all the joys of being able to read the County Chronicle and other items like that. So when we moved into our house, somebody had told me it had been a pub, and I knew by the names of the houses there were other pubs in the village, because they were now houses, but they were called the Crown or whatever. So I was interested in that. So initially I just researched our house, and then I went back to work full-time. So I didn't really have time to do any more than our house. So when I retired, which was probably 15, 20 years later, then I thought, I wonder where these other houses fit into the story of our village. So my husband and I started researching at the record office and finding out more about other places in the village.
And that's when people started to come forward. I know that you held some exhibitions in the village, inviting people that were living in the village now, but also from the past, to come forward with photographs and memories. So why do you think people actually did come forward? What was it about the project that you think kind of...
I think the first exhibition, which we didn't realise was going to be one of 6 exhibitions, we just hired the hall for the afternoon and we blew up some small postcards of the village to A3 size, and we put them up, or maybe bigger than A3, they were very big, and we put them up in the hall, and we invited people through the village magazine and with posters up to come and share their photographs and memories of the village, thinking we'd find out more to help us in our research. And we were astonished because people turned up and they were pulling out little card tables and setting up huge displays on their business, like the garage, the person who owned the garage. He showed all the photographs he'd got going right back as far as he could find them when his father ran the village garage. So that was so successful that after that we decided that we would have another exhibition, and this time we gave a theme to it. I think one of the exhibitions was farming, one was on school days, and each time people brought their photographs of that time, of their memories of that theme, and then we copied those photographs onto computer in the hall there, and then we never took the photographs home, which thank goodness we didn't, or we probably would have lost them. And gradually, over 6 years, we amassed something like 1,500 photographs, which is quite astonishing.
And in those 6 years, it did really grow, didn't it? And then from that very small seed of you researching your own house, it then grew into this wonderful book. Why do you think it's important that people do tell their stories, do impart their memories? Why is that important, do you think?
I think it gives them a sense of their place in their community. That's quite important. I think people also like to compare memories And so we had people meeting each other who, in one case, they hadn't met each other since they were about 7 or 8 years old and had played football in the village. And one of those people happened to come from Australia. He was on holiday in the village. And the other person came up from Southampton to be with his family for the exhibition. And they hadn't seen each other since they were about 9 or 10 years old. So that was quite an extraordinary meeting.
And I know you've got a couple of extracts from the book that you'd like to just quickly read for us.
One of them is from a person called Phil. And Phil was fostered from just 7 months old in 1955, along with his 2 brothers. The father had been taken to prison, and so it was going to be long-term fostering because the mother couldn't cope with her children. I remember life as always being busy at the Myrtles. Nellie liked to live in slight chaos, with many children coming and going, some for short stays and others for longer. We brothers were required to share a bed and personal facilities like the toilet, which was a shed down the garden, and a tin bath available once a week on a Sunday. Many children shared that water. Meals were at a set time, so everyone was sat at the table. Traditional meals made with all sorts of cheaper cuts of meat. There was always plenty of bread and potatoes. And in those days, we bought all our groceries from the village shop, and they delivered them. With not many toys, we amused ourselves, making dens, climbing trees, and constructing bows and arrows. I remember shooting my sister in the head. She cried. There were stone fights and boat races and a tin bath on the Piddle. We always had plenty of animals, dogs, cats, rabbits, guinea pigs, geese, chickens and ducks, adding to the busy household. Christmas was a particularly busy time, playing games, plenty of food, and a lovely atmosphere. Presents were limited. There was a stocking with oranges, apples, sweets, and one special present. I remember one year, a football shirt and socks, a treasured present.
Lovely. As I explained at the beginning of this show, some of you in the audience, I really hope that you have similar memories. You might have other experiences, other stories that you want to share. Now, if people are kind of feeling a bit shy, Bridget, what would you do to encourage them to put their name down, to put their details, so Ali and I at a later date can come and interview them? Why is it important, do you think, to capture these memories?
I think partly because nowadays we don't record things, we don't write letters as much, and we don't take photographs with a camera and put those pictures into books. We send them on Instagram, we put them on Facebook, but they're not there forever. They won't necessarily stay for posterity. But I think really if people are shy about being interviewed, in some cases what we got them to do was to write down their memories, and some of those were very precious. And we had some wonderful stories, and that one from Phil Carter, who actually I don't think can read and write, so his wife wrote it down, he dictated it, and we had 1 or 2 of those dictated stories, but they were absolutely wonderful, so really worth keeping.
And I'd just like to add, we have one more film before the interval, and Bridget has actually brought a few copies of her book. So if anybody is interested in buying a copy, Bridget will be around in the interval, so you can have a chat with her and maybe purchase a copy. I do recommend it. It's an absolutely beautiful book, and it is a book of love. I mean, I can really see that when I've read the book. It's full of passion and it's full of love, and you've caught something that is going to be there forever now, which is a wonderful kind of testament to you and the hard work and passion that started all those many years back before you retired. So what's the highlight been for you, would you say, Bridget?
Well, obviously the publication of the book, which I have to add was published with my husband, who's also sitting here, and on the back of the book you'll see Ian Condon, who worked for the County Council, who did all the photographic work for us and recorded it all. I think those exhibitions were wonderful. They became like family parties. And there was one family where in 1942 there had been a murder in the village. Well, we had to call it in the book the fatal shooting, because amazingly the guy got off, but he shot at point blank range his lover's husband in the back, and said to the police he'd been cleaning his gun. And he actually got off. So that family hadn't discussed it because they'd been children at the time it happened, and they knew about this, and the family was a little bit divided. But when they came back and they met one another and they met a lot of the villagers who remembered them, then it became a family reunion which they repeated every year when we had the exhibitions. So that was really good.